I'd like to call to order the May 21st, 2013 City of Troy Zoning Board of Appeals. Thank you for attending. Before we begin the meeting, I'm going to read a brief statement that gives an orientation as to how we conduct business before the board, and then we'll move on with the rest of the agenda. The Board of Zoning Appeals is a group of 7 of your neighbors or peers appointed by City Council to pass judgment on requests for variances and other matters that are brought before them. A variance is the relaxation of the literal provisions of the zoning ordinance. Petitioners must indicate a hardship or a practical difficulty running with the land that would warrant the granting of the variance. The board will hear the items in the order that they appear on the agenda. When an item is called, the chairman will verify that the petitioner is present. Then the city administration will summarize the facts of the case. The petitioner will then be given an opportunity to address the board to explain the justification for the action requested. After the petitioner makes their presentation and answers any questions that the board may have, the chairman will open the public hearing. Any person wishing to speak on the request should raise their hand, and when recognized by the chairman, come up to the podium. The speaker will identify themselves with their name and their address and essentially indicate their relationship to the property in question. For example, next door neighbor, live behind the property, etc. Upon doing so, then they will state whether they are in favor or against the variance request and give reasons for their opinion. Comments must be directed through the chairman. Comments should be kept as brief as possible and closely pertain to the matter under consideration. Only one person will be recognized by the chairman to speak at one time. At the conclusion of the public comments, the chairman will close the public hearing. Once the public hearing is closed, no other public comment will be taken unless in response to a specific question by a member of the board. The board will then make a motion to approve, deny, or table, which means to delay the request. In order for the request to pass, a minimum of 4 votes for approval are needed. If the request is not granted, the applicant has the right to appeal the board's decision to the Oakland County Circuit Court. If any of you want a copy of tonight's agenda, just outside the doors of the council chambers, there is a stand with extra copies. Moving forward, I'd like to go ahead and ask Mr. Evans to read the roll call, please. Call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Bloomingdale.
Here.
Mr. Clark.
Here.
Mr. Courtney.
Here.
Mr. Eisenbacher.
Here.
Mr. Neal.
Here.
Mr. Krent.
Here.
Mr. Lambert.
Here.
Thank you. Item number 2, approval of the minutes of the April 16, 2013 meeting. You all have it in your packets. Is there any questions from the board or revisions by the board?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Clark?
I'd like to move approval of the minutes as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Support.
Mr. Courtney? Thank you. Mr. Evans, can you call the roll call vote on the minutes?
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mr. Courtney.
Yes.
Mr. Eisenbacher.
Yes.
Mr. Neal.
I'm going to abstain. I wasn't here, so.
Mr. Krent.
Yes.
Mr. Lambert.
Yes.
Mr. Bloomingdale.
Yes.
Moving onward to item number 3, approval of the agenda. Are there any proposed changes to the agenda or additions by any member of the board or city staff? No. Moving onward into item 4, we're going to item 4A, hearing of cases. The first is a variance request for George Bogart for Tough Shed, Inc. Mr. Evans, could you please give us the city information on it?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This property is located at 4585 Butler. That's in a single-family residential area east of John R. and south of Long Lake Road. On the overhead, it is the parcel outlined in red and surrounded with a circle. Everything in yellow on this map is single-family residential, including the parcel in the middle, which is the subject property. It's at the corner of London and Butler. And there's a close-up of the property configuration. Now, the applicant is requesting to place a shed on the property, and there's 4 views of the elevations of the shed. In this drawing here, Butler's at the bottom and London is to the left. And the area outlined in the cloud is where they propose to put the shed. They want to put a 10 by 20 shed, and a portion of that shed is going to be located in the front yard adjacent to London. And I've drawn in a blue line there to indicate approximately where the front yards would be on this corner lot. Now, the zoning ordinance requires that sheds only go in the rear yard. So a portion of this shed, which is proposed to be 28 feet from the property line along London Drive, if approved tonight, will be located within the front yard. And that's what they're asking their variance for, is to place this shed in that location. And I'll entertain any questions from the board.
I do have one for you. Has there been any additional information given by neighbors, either for or against the variance request? I didn't see any in the packet, but
No, we haven't had any comments.
no comments. Okay.
Got a question for staff?
Sure. Mr. Krent?
Yeah. Mr. Evans, the setback requirements in the rear yard of the home, is that the dashed line that they have on this drawing that is right on the shed line, the rear shed line? Is that the rear setback line? Just want to know what that dashed line is. It does say on the drawing that it's an easement, a 20-foot easement from that a floodplain, but or a drain actually. So I'm just want to know what that dashed line means.
That dashed line, and there's two of them, it does show an easement, and I believe the applicant can provide us additional information as to the nature of that easement, but that is an easement.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any additional questions for staff? Hearing none, I request that the applicant or their designated representatives come forward to provide any additional information that you would like us to consider. If you could, sir, you just state your name and association with the request, and you're free to go on and make your presentation.
My name is George Bogart. I'm with Tough Shed Incorporated. I'm here representing Jim and Kathy Reinhardt at 4585 Butler Drive for the variance for the shed. To answer the question, the line, there is a 20-foot easement there. That's an underground utility easement. So if you can see up at the top, you see where the fence is, and then there's a 20-foot easement from there, which is not a buildable area. So the reason we asked for the placement of the shed there, obviously, is that it is out of the easement, but you can also see if you try to move the shed to the north at all, you got a brick patio there. On the right side of that, to the north side, there's a big pine tree. They're only dealing with 21 feet of building area between that easement line and the rear of the house.
Is there any additional information that you want to provide, or is it pretty much everything?
And I know you look at it, and I know we can only build in the rear yard there. And if we moved it behind the house line, per se, there is a windows, the gas line that runs to the house, the electrical service, which is all underground there. And what their hope was is they're hoping to be able to have the front of the shed in line with that door from the garage, if you can see it, where the fenced-in area is, where the wheelbarrow is, for convenience. Their issue is, of course, they're an older couple. They have a small two-car garage on this house, and they want to be able to park their cars in it because the winters are getting tougher for them.
Okay. One question for you. Is the outside appearance of the shed to complement the house? I noticed the house had like a siding. It looked like the shed drawing had like a siding material. I didn't know.
The siding, obviously, on the house is vinyl siding. The siding on our shed is an engineered siding. It's called Smart Side. It resembles a T111, but we're going to paint to match.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Are there any additional questions for the applicant's representative from the board? Okay. Hearing none, sir. First of all, thank you for coming. We're going to open the public comment, and after that, we'll discuss the matter. We may ask you to come back at some point. But if you could have a seat, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to open the public comment on this particular matter. Is there anybody in the gallery who would like to speak to this particular issue? Seeing none and mentioning for the minutes that there is no one present to speak, I'm going to close the public comment section, and I'm going to bring it back to the board for discussion. Does the board have any comments regarding what's proposed or requested by the applicant? Mr. Krent?
Again, I wanted to ask Mr. Evans, That drawing that you had up earlier showing that blue line, it clips the corner
Right.
of that shed. Just approximately, how much on the front yard of that shed? Is it a couple feet? Is it a foot? Just the blue, it's not up on that one. Yeah, that one.
Let me do this. If I could take a look at the zoning ordinance. Now, it indicates that it's going to be about 28 feet from the front property line.
Okay.
And I think one way we can help answer that is to get an idea of what the front yard setback is for that district, and I'll look that up right now.
While Mr. Evans is checking into that, is there any other comments or questions from the board members? Or potential motions to approve or deny? Although I want to hold off on that until Mr. Evans has had time to review. Sure, absolutely.
There appears to me that there's only one party that is really going to be affected by it, and that's the ones that live across London, which is, well, it's a front yard, it's not a front yard on this one,
Right,
but
exactly.
only the one party across the way, and since they didn't indicate yay or nay, I would assume that they don't care either way.
I'm working under that assumption, yeah, that, they have not. Mr. Evans?
Yeah, the front yard setback is 30 feet.
Okay.
30.
Any additional comments or questions for staff or discussion items on this matter from the board?
Mr.
Mr.
Chairman,
Lambert?
I would move to approve the request based upon the characteristics of the property with the 2 front yards and the easement in the backyard. There's a hardship for the applicant, which gives us the leeway to approve that variance that the petitioner is applying for.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a second. We have a motion before to approve, and it's been seconded. Mr. Evans, could you please
Mr.
call
Court,
the roll?
thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Courtney,
Yes.
Mr. Eisenbacher,
Yes.
Mr. Neal,
Yes.
Mr. Krent,
Yes.
Mr. Lambert,
Yes.
Mr. Bloomingdale,
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Congratulations, you have your variance. Good luck with your shed construction. I'm moving onward to item 4B. It's a variance request for Ken and Amanda Crump at 1643 Rockfield. Mr. Evans, if you could give us the background information, we'd appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Mr. Chairman. This property is located on Rockfield, 1643. This is in a neighborhood behind Athens High School, which is north of Waddles and west of John R. Road. In the upper left-hand corner is the property outlined in red. The property is a zoned single-family residential, as is all surrounding property as indicated in the zoning overlay map in yellow. This is a close-up of the lot in question, and what they want to do is split the lot in half, and my next slide will illustrate the split line. This is, whoop. So that's before. That's what they want to do, split it right there. Well, there's a house right under the number 1643, and in order to get the required minimum 85-foot lot width for the parcel to the east, the result will be, as illustrated here, is that the side yard setback for the existing house from the new lot line will be 8.29 feet, and the required setback is 10 feet. So they needed a variance of just under 2 feet in order to create a parcel that meets the minimum lot width for this neighborhood.
Thank you. Is the applicant present or other parties? Evening, sir. If you
Hi, good evening. I'm Ken Crum. I'm the applicant.
Thank you.
So the house, to move it that 1.7 feet, this is not cost effective for us to pick the house up and move it to address or eliminate the need for the variance. The reason the lot line is set there where it is right now is because in the zoning districts, the minimum width is 85 feet. So that's where we basically had to place the lot. And, it's a big lot, as you saw in the previous overhead there. We're bringing it more into to the norm of the neighborhood where most of the lots are 100 wide. So it shouldn't cause any issues as far as air and sun and some of the other standards that you guys are considering this evening.
One question, the parcel as it exists, what is the reason for the split? If you could restate or
Yeah,
expand
so I'm looking to sell off the parcel to the east.
to the east.
Yes, and I can't market that unless I have it obviously split off.
Are there any additional questions for the applicant? Mr. Courtney?
Yes, eventually you plan to take the house that exists down.
If all things go as planned, yes, sir, I do plan to take that house down.
Okay.
And there's plenty of building envelope there that would accommodate that, and I expect that variance disappears the minute that house comes down.
For clarification, you're referring to the house to the east?
It's 1643. There is no house on 1643 there. That's a 4-car garage that I'll have to take down as part of the split,
Okay.
which I'm aware of. So that'll come down, but yeah.
But you, okay, your intent then is to do it now, but if you don't get the approval, then you would not sell off until you were ready to tear down the house that exists and rebuild?
Yeah, until I can get the mortgage paid off, which, right, and
Yeah.
so, and we've had it since 2004. We bought it at the peak of the market, and so we've been basically sitting on this. I own the house across the street, and that's the one we occupy right now. So we're trying to, move along, and
Okay, but at the present time, are you renting the,
no.
no, were you, or what, is that your intent to rent?
No, we had tenants in there. They did too much damage to the house, so we're going to leave it sit.
Okay.
So it's, at this point, it's not in shape to refurbish. It's just, we're waiting till we can get the finances in order to potentially build. But at this point, depending on what the market does, if the real estate turns again and goes south, I'm not sure what we'll do.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there additional questions for the applicant? To clarify, to make it clear, your intent is long-term to basically sell off the parcels, and as part of your activities to split the lot and to market it, you need the variance in order to do.
Yeah, I believe I have a
Split the property off
buyer
and
already
then-
lined up for that lot, if I can execute the variance and get this moving along. So that's why we're here today, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And just to check before I ask you to sit down, is there any other questions or follow-up from Mr. Courtney? No? Okay. Thank you. What we're going to do is, if you could have a seat, we're going to open up the public comment period. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this matter before the board, either for or against the matter? Seeing no one in the gallery with an interest to speak on it, I'm going to close the public hearing, and I'm going to bring this back to the board for discussion. Are there any questions, comments for staff, or thoughts that the members of the board would like to convey?
Just got one.
Mr. Krent?
Just one question again for Mr. Evans. What zoning district is this? Is it R1B or R1C?
R1C.
R1C. Now, I know from my work in R1B, because the depths of the lot are over 300 feet, they allow a narrower lot based on the total amount of acreage or square footage of the lot. Like, case in point, in R1B, you have to have 100-foot wide lots, but because in our subdivision, ours are over 300 feet deep, they're allowed 90 feet even though it states in the district that it should be 100, they're allowed to bring it back down to 90. I'm just wondering if something applied to this similar, where we could narrow, is R1C the width of the lot 85 as far as the ordinance, and can it be reduced because of the depth?
Let me take a look at that. I'll answer the first question just for the baseline on the, R1C, 85-foot minimum lot width. And I think you're referring to a concept, I believe it's titled lot averaging.
Correct.
That's as you subdivide.
Yeah, that's in section 10, the title, okay, average lot sizes. What I'm putting over on the overhead now is section of the zoning ordinance, Tom, that you're referring to. I don't know if the applicant has applied this, thought of it.
Because if it's reduced by 10%, 10% of 85,
Be 8.5, that would certainly take care of it. And,
the only difference would be if we ruled that way, that the lot would be smaller. It wouldn't be 85, it would be, but then the person wouldn't even have to apply for variance.
well, that's true, and
Okay, that's,
Yeah.
I just,
Chairman?
yeah, it could be, we'd have to crunch the numbers.
Isn't this lot averaging going to a person that is subdividing? This is a brand-new subdivision,
Well, this is a lot split.
lots,
but a lot split doesn't come under the lot averaging. That should be a new subdivision. You got 100 lots, you're able to average in the 100 lots.
Well, under the newer zoning ordinance, and we did do it that way under the older, the newer one does not indicate that if you're subdividing or if you've got a project with a certain number of lots, I mean, if you're doing a lot,
It does apply to splits.
yes, yes.
Does apply to splits, not new subdivision.
Well, it could apply to both,
Exactly.
but it used to be that it was a development tool for people building subdivisions to have smaller sized lots, perhaps reduce their development costs in regards to how long the road needs to be, how much sewer, and provide an open space for the neighborhood. But now, you can do it with any lot split. So if the numbers work out, it could be done.
Mr. Krantz, yes, I will in just a moment. You had made a comment about it not even being necessary.
have a variance. If-
Necessary to variance. I was wondering, can you expand upon that for a
Well,
minute?
yeah, if the lot was reduced, I don't do the math in my head,
Right, I understand.
10%, it's 8.5 feet minus 85 feet, it'll allow, he won't need a variance because when he splits the lot, the bigger lot would be in compliance too.
Right.
And he doesn't have to split it all the full, he could just split it to that 1.7 feet. He doesn't have to take that. So it's up to, I'd like to hear the applicant's
Understand. Sir, if you could you please come back up here? We have a few more questions.
So when I talked to the assessor's office way back when we first started this conversation, she was not in favor, and I think her line of thinking was similar to Mr. Courtney's, that we needed to maintain the 85. She feels that the depth of the lot makes them really, if you get too narrow, it makes the lots very awkward. And so my personal opinion is I think this variance is less of a, doing it the other way would make that lot very difficult from a building envelope perspective, because now you're going to go from 76, and then you 2 10-yard side lots, now you're at a 55, 56. So that's going to be a really tight, narrow building envelope from a development standpoint. Plus, it's going to make it extreme. There's at least 1 or 2, maybe 3 other lots on the street that are 85 wide. So this would bring that in line with those. Going below that, then it makes it the narrowest lot and would. Yeah, so that's what was the perspective I was given by.
So you'd prefer to leave it at 85 and get the variance?
I would, just because of, my long-term goal is that I get to develop the other piece of the property, and then the house goes away, then this variance, and then they've got a nice lot, and I've got a nice lot.
Very nice.
Mr. Chairman?
Just a minute, Mr. Courtney. Yeah, I'd just note for the record, just looking at the plat map as we have with the aerial overlay, 3 houses down the other side of the street, there's an 85-foot wide lot. So from what you're saying, you have exactly that situation 3 lots down.
Yeah, and I think it's on the other side yet. 1593 is probably pretty close to that, as well as the one across the street, so.
Hold on for one moment.
Sure.
Mr. Courtney, do you have a question for the
Yes,
applicant, or is it a discussion question?
If he can split this without getting a variance, now what is the hardship? I realize he wants a bigger lot than he can split for, but that's not really a hardship, I don't think.
Well, I think temporarily, though, we fall into an issue because of the existing structure, which will be removed. I know it'll go away in a while. It's kind of a chicken or the egg issue, I think, so to speak. But I'd like to actually, we're going to discuss this more
Okay.
up here, and if you could have a seat, I appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman?
Krantz,
Yeah, I just want to say, because this existing home is going to be demolished, the existing garage is going to be demolished, I think for the betterment of the city itself, to have these 85-foot lots would be better for the neighborhood. So I would be in favor of the variance.
I second that.
My feeling is I tend to agree with the mindset. I do have one question for staff, and I would direct this to the city attorney, is, as you can imagine, the general sentiment is heading towards what is more usable and better for the street, and then hence for the city and surrounding neighbors. Except our feelings, while logical, I'm not sure if exactly there's a true zoning hardship answer that goes with it. So my question to you is, can we move in the direction where it seems to be heading without stepping on our own ordinance? Your opinion would be?
You do need to find a hardship. You cannot grant a variance if there is not a hardship. And I would also remind you that the hardship has to be related to the land itself. You shouldn't consider what the intended future use is going to be. You shouldn't consider the fact that they're proposing to tear down the house. That shouldn't enter into your considerations. This is related to the land itself. It's permanent. If you allow this to happen, then that will always be, you'll always have the larger lot and then the smaller lot. But again, the hardship has to be related to the land itself, and you do need to find a hardship.
And I take it from a hardship perspective, thinking ahead, if we're talking about a 76-foot or 75-foot lot, for example, making a hardship from a marketing perspective of being an attractive lot to sell does not meet the definition.
Financial considerations will never, ever justify a hardship. A hardship would be something like you want to preserve natural features. You've got, something that is not created by either the current owner of the property or a predecessor owner of the property.
Okay, thank you. I thought that was the answer, but I just wanted it in the record. Mr. Bloomingdale.
The fact that he's subdividing this at 85 feet, which means the minimum requirement, does he need a variance?
I don't know what the dimensions are in the lot averaging. That's a creative idea. That's creative. I don't know that has been fully explored. Just looking at the language of just that particular section, it does appear that it would apply to a lot split, although I agree with Mr. Courtney in that was not the intent. The intent was to allow for cohesive development and for a subdivider. So, so I don't know whether or not this would satisfy the conditions of the lot averaging.
Is under that ordinance that Mr. Krent mentioned, the designated lot width is 85 feet minimum.
The zoning ordinance says that it's 85 feet minimum. If you apply it, there is an option to apply the average lot size, which is what I posted up there. And we didn't have any reason to crunch the numbers on that. And
Right.
the applicant wants to do what he wants to do.
So I'm going to ask my question again.
Yeah.
Is there a variance required for this?
Yes, yes, it's for the side yard setback to keep the existing house there. But it's not for the lot width.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Lambert.
Question for staff. So in essence, what we're looking at is the lot split itself is something that's an administrative decision, is that correct? Or, but you cannot approve that unless we grant the applicant a variance, because to grant the lot split on your end would create a violation of the existing rules for where that setback is supposed to be. Is that
Right,
correct?
right.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Chairman,
We're back to hardship.
Mr. Eisenbacher.
it looks like there's a very nice tree on that side of the house where if we force the house to be moved, that tree would be killed. That appears to be somewhat of a hardship. And I believe that tree is a natural feature. And by destroying that part of the house, they would be putting the equipment in the footprint of that tree. And I believe it's in our interest for the future value of that house and just for greenery in the city to maintain that tree.
Okay, Mr. Eisenbacher, are you, would you be willing to put that forward in a motion?
Yes.
Before I do that, I do have one question for the applicant that I think would have to be answered. Could you please come forward, sir, for a moment? Question I have for you is, when you demolish that structure, are you able to demolish that structure without destroying the tree?
Probably not, because it's a pine tree. The shallow root system on that would probably be destroyed because it's within 5 feet of that house. And see, we've got kind of, and this happened in the neighborhood when I talked to the neighbors, we're talking about the lot on the east. I know we're talking about the east. The variance applies to the west lot there, right? So,
Yeah, so you understand, and I think you do, but I want to make sure you understand is that we have a very narrow mandate, and
Yep.
we have to work within these rules.
Yep.
We understand what we're trying to do, it's reasonable, makes sense. We have to be consistent across the board with all sorts of decisions we make. And well, what I'm trying to say is simply, we're trying to work with you, and we try to work with every applicant. We're just struggling right here to get all the Ts crossed and Is dotted.
Right.
So, but thank you for answering that question. Let me ask you this. From how we define a hardship, is there any hardship that you are aware of for the property that makes, that you feel you're currently facing, that you have not expressed, that you want us to consider?
I mean, well, I can't move the house, right? And it's minimal, in my estimation, it's a minimal variance. Talking to the assessor, the conversation we had, as I stand here right now, I don't think she'll approve if I go back, she told me it was 85, and that's what she would be willing to approve. So if I'm sent away with make it, 85 minus the 175, she may tell me no. So then I'm going to get bounced back and forth between the different entities trying to get this done.
Understand.
So that becomes my hardship, is at some point I need somebody to say yes, that this is, right, like you said earlier, the chicken or the egg thing, that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, that doesn't qualify as a hardship, but I understand what you're saying. I appreciate you being candid about that. It's a practical difficulty for you, for sure, but not in the sense that we mean it. But, okay, well, I appreciate you answering that question. We're gonna churn
Okay.
over this a little bit more. And I have a question for staff. If we aren't able to help him get to where he's trying to go, considering what his long-term use of the property is there any recourse that he has through assessing, planning, et cetera, the fact that the house is going to be demolished, condemned, et cetera? Is there any other options that we can point the gentleman in to get his end game completed without us granting a variance?
The only one that I can think of would be the average lot size, but we haven't crunched the numbers or haven't been presented anything. Quite frankly, that wasn't a discussion that we had with the
Understand.
applicant. So that's the only one I can think of.
Do you think it's worthwhile for us to consider possibly tabling the item so we have time to look at it from that perspective and then come back and then maybe next month?
I think that's a question the board can definitely consider
Okay,
if everyone, the majority of the board feels comfortable with doing that.
understand. Mr. Courtney?
Yeah, I'd like to ask the petitioner,
Sorry about this, sir. Could you come forward again?
the lot,
Goes through, that's why I'm here.
the lot that you already have somebody interested in, is that somebody a builder?
Yes, they're a builder who's already has basically they're a builder I already talked to when I was trying to figure out what I was going to do, and they had somebody approach them, a previous customer said, hey, we're looking for a new lot. They're a Troy resident, they'd like to stay in Troy, and they were looking for a bigger lot that has some real estate, and as you guys all know, there's not a lot of large lots available in Troy, and I happen to have one,
No,
so.
where I'm coming from, though, is if you talk to the builder in the meantime, see if he's interested in 2 sites.
Oh, I've had those conversations ad nauseam with anybody who's willing to have the conversation. Nobody's interested to
Okay.
get me out of that. Yeah, but thank you I've thought of that, thanks.
I've got Chairman.
Well, Mr. Eisenbacher and then Mr. Krent.
I believe in the notes, you stated that it's against the mortgage to tear down the house without,
Yeah, I've already asked the bank
Having
if I
it paid
could demo the house so I could do the split, and they promptly said, no, that would be fraud, because it's the collateral against. So that's, I know we're not supposed to talk about economics, but really I'm handcuffed here right now as to where I'm at.
No, I understand. It's the fact of the reality, so that's
Yeah.
good information, Mr. Craig.
If you shaved off 1.7 feet of the existing house,
You can't, because that's the foundation and the outside wall. So it's a support wall, you can't do that, and that would, yeah.
Damage the tree at the same time.
I'd like
Mr. Eisenbacher?
I'd like to make a resolution to approve based on damage to the vegetation, if, for clarification.
Did we have public hearing?
Yeah, we actually kind of are. We're kind of in discussion. I would, if you could hold on for a minute, I'll,
Okay.
you know, I'm by no means a genius at Robert's rules, but try to keep things in order. Thank you, sir. If you could have a seat for a moment. Now, bringing it back to the board, Mr. Eisenbacher, I think you have a motion you'd like to propose.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve the variance based on damage to the existing vegetation. Oh,
Just
Mr.
want to
Chairman?
make sure that you open up the public
Did you have,
hearing.
did you open and close the public hearing?
Yeah, we did.
Oh, we did do that, okay, I'm sorry.
We doesn't have anybody speak about it. Actually, Mr. Eisenbacher, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but if, I want to ask one question, and I think I'm close to the answer on, is that, Mr. Evans, if you could give me an answer on one question. If we were to spend a little bit of time and crunch the numbers, what's your best guess at this point? Do you think really a solution can be found, or are we going to be back at square one?
I don't know.
I understand, that's fair.
I just didn't come prepared to,
No, I get it. No problem at all. Sir, ma'am.
I would just also indicate the applicant has indicated that he does not want to make that lot any narrower than the 85 feet. And
Oh,
that is a
understood, yeah.
consideration as well. You know, the 85 feet is consistent. So even if you were to crunch the numbers, may not be what you really want for that neighborhood.
Mr. Eisenbacher, back to you.
thank you. I would like to make the motion to approve based on damage to the existing vegetation. There would be a buffer between the houses in the future, present and future, and for the 1.71 feet that's requested. Not sure what other information we need to include in the resolution.
No, it's adequate.
yeah, and I would opine that if there is a second, that any other,
Is there a second?
second, Mr. Bloomingdale, if there are any other practical difficulties that other board members would like to state for the record, they could do that as part of the discussion.
Right, I'm going to open up the matter for discussion with the board for the motion that's pending to approve the applicant's request. Mr. Courtney.
Yeah, I'd like to at least bring to the attention of everyone that if we did push him off and he went through the potentially smaller lot, it would be the smallest one on the whole area, which would be a detriment to the neighborhood. Bad enough going 85, but to go 75 would be horrible.
Thank you. Are there any additional comments, Mr. Clark?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I would just like to inquire of the maker of the motion, what specific vegetation he's referring to. I heard the applicant reference the tree which most likely would come down, but is the motion related to the current status versus the future status of that tree? I think it's a little confusing because I've been on this board for a long time, but of course, Mr. Eisenbacher is a former member of City Council and dealing with a lot of planning commission issues and so forth. I'm just curious to see the greater aspects of that facet of the motion. And maybe staff could address it as well.
Mr. Eisenbacher, do you?
I'm just basically based on the cursory drive-by and the pictures provided. That looked like a nice pine tree, and it was situated close enough to the house that by having to demolish 1.7 feet of the house, it would cause damage to the tree, and so that was the reason.
Okay. Then I would like to inquire, thank you, of staff. So, Mr. Evans, does this mean that that tree would become protected in a sense? Or what is the status of that vegetation moving forward when, if he were granted that variance, having to keep it versus choosing to, one morning waking up and deciding to get rid of it? I'm just curious.
I would opine that, I don't know. It seems like it would be a condition that if this motion is granted, that, I don't know.
I do have a question regarding this, and I think in a way, I'm going to follow up with a bit of what Mr. Courtney mentioned about the lot size, the impact on the area. I do have a question that I'd like staff and the city attorney to answer. Because if this works, then we would end up replacing Mr. Eisenbacher's motion with a modified one, if he's willing. But what my question is under the variance review standards for zoning ordinance and under section 15.04E, number 2, item E, says the proposed variance will not be harmful or alter the essential character of the area in which the property is located. The essential character of the area, if that's my question, is if we allow or force this transaction to only be available to have a slot smaller than 85 feet, wouldn't it be worthwhile for us to make the argument that by allowing this request, we're allowing for a betterment to the subdivision or the houses on the street, therefore it is worthy for us to grant the exception? Can we make an argument along those lines? Forget about the tree, forget about, which is probably going to go away for many reasons. But is that possible?
I appreciate the attempts to be creative.
You know what I mean?
I understand what you're trying to do here. Two things. First of all, it's a lot currently, so what he wants to do is split the lot. So there's really no right to do that. I mean, so your action is not really creating a less than 85-foot lot. I mean, his action, what he wants to do, that's what it is. However, you can take all of these circumstances, and it's really what the board decides as of this moment. Is there a hardship as of this moment? And, you know, as far as Mr. Clark's question about what do you do, is it a protected tree? Again, the focus on hardship is right now at this point in time. So I think it would not necessarily become a protected tree, but you know, certainly if this board feels that that this relief is required in order to avoid some of the hardships of the land itself, then you should make that in your motion.
Thank you. Are there any additional comments regarding the motion that's before us to approve the applicant's request based in part on vegetation or other matters? Mr. Lambert.
My only comment is that I really feel badly for the petitioner because of this mortgage that's hanging over his head on the property, because if that wasn't there, I think this would be a pretty easy process to deal with and wouldn't even have to come to ZBA. But from what my perspective, it's an economic issue more than it is anything else. And, you know, I'm sure that he would do a good job and the neighborhood would be improved by building 2 new homes on those 2 parcels. But from my point of view, what I can see is it all comes down to an economic matter. And from my interpretation and based upon staff's input, an economic reasoning is not enough, in my opinion, to grant the variance. So as the motion is currently structured, I would have to vote no on it.
Thank you, Mr. Lambert. Any additional comments or discussion on the matter? Mr. Eisenbacher, is there any, well, I don't know if this is proper, but I don't know if it's proper for me to ask if there's anything that you would have to get the individual who seconded the motion to support or another board member, but is there anything that in your motion that you want to revise or amend before we go to the inevitable vote?
No.
No? Okay, thank you. Are there any additional comments or questions for staff or this matter? All right. Hearing none, Mr. Evans, could you call the question?
Mr. Eisenbacher.
Yes.
Mr. Neal.
No.
Mr. Krent.
Yes.
Mr. Lambert.
No.
Mr. Bloomingdale.
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mr. Courtney.
No.
The motion carries 4-3.
Congratulations. You have your variance, and we wish you the best of luck with both properties. And thank you for your time. Yep. All right, moving onward with item 4C. It's our last hearing, last item, our active cases for the night. It's a variance request for Jeffrey and Krista Falk at 4197 Ravenwood Court. Mr. Evans, could you please give us the background information?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This property is located in a single-family residential district north of Waddles and east of Beach Road. The subject property and all surrounding properties, and by the way, the subject property is outlined in red on the overhead, is zoned single-family residential. The property sits at the 90-degree corner of Ravenwood Court. The applicant is proposing to expand the garage that currently exists on the southwest corner of the house. Now this drawing here, Beach Road is to the top of this drawing. And because that particular yard fronts a street, it's considered a front yard. And the required setback for the home and anything attached to the home is 40 feet from the Ravenwood property line. His proposal is to have it be 37 feet setback from Ravenwood, so he needs a 3-foot variance in order to be successful tonight. And I'll entertain any questions from the board.
Thank you. Before I have the applicant come up, are there any questions specifically for staff on this item? Is the applicant or the representatives present?
Good evening. My name is Alex Bogarts. I'm the architect for the petitioner.
Feel free to go ahead and expand upon your application and provide any information you feel that we also should know for your request.
We feel that there are practical difficulties in the site to expand a 3-car garage. Number one, going off to the north of the existing garage, there's topography back there, and in addition to the topography, the problem with adding the garage to the back there would cut off the natural light to there's a door wall off the breakfast nook area, so that really is not a possibility. We can't come off of the front, which is the east property line, because the subdivision restrictions preclude having any garage doors facing the street where the front door is. And we certainly don't have any dimension of the north part of the home itself, because we are 12.5 feet off the property line at that point. What we've proposed to do is just to expand a portion of the garage and limit that both in terms of its dimension as well as its height. This is a 2-story residence. We are looking to only add the area where we have the 1-car garage space where we'd achieve a 20-foot depth on that garage, and take this, in addition to holding just that portion of the 1-car garage door as the intrusion into the side yard setback. We've also held down the roof line and tried to bring down the scale of the structure, so we feel that we have made an effort to reduce the amount of visual impact to the property and to the neighborhood by adding just that portion of the structure. In addition, another thing that might be of interest to the board is the east to west line along the side yard setback. There is approximately 75 feet, and we are looking for only 20. We are only looking to encroach only about 20% into that for the 15 feet of that dimension. We're not, as I said, in addition to that, we're not looking to expand the entire garage area, just that one portion, so we can achieve a 20 feet on the interior. So in brief, we have topography to the north of the garage. We have practical difficulty because there's also a limited amount of area to negotiate, as they have in the existing garage entry. And for those reasons, we are in front of the board for a request.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant's representative from the board? Mr. Lambert?
Yes. Were you the original architect on the home?
I was not.
well, I drove by the home today. It's a very beautiful home, but you definitely have a lot of challenges on that site, and you're going to earn your money putting this additional garage on it. But it's a very beautiful home, and it's obvious, at least from my point of view, that there are some definite hardships in trying to accommodate that additional garage on the site.
Thank you. We felt the same way when we started looking at it.
Are there additional questions for the applicant from the board? No. Seeing none, what we're going to do is we're going to open for public comment and have a discussion. We may ask you to come back up, as you probably noticed from the last case. Opening up the public comment on this particular item, is there anyone who would like to speak on this matter? Evening, sir. If you just state your name and your relationship to the property, and feel free to give your opinion.
Good evening. My name is Joseph Cracchiolo, and I am the homeowner to the side, which I'll be facing if the board elects to go with the new addition on 4160 Ravenwood Court.
Do you mean to the east?
I would be to the south.
South, okay. So from that aerial photo, you're actually kind of off the property, off the picture.
Down across the street.
Gotcha,
Right,
okay.
across the street.
Just want to make sure we understood.
Okay. And I'm in favor of it. I think it would only beautify the neighborhood. The elevations are beautiful, and anything would, it's a very plain look on that side right now, and by just doing that would just enhance it even more.
And your house faces directly out at it?
Directly right there.
So it's something you see.
I will see it all the time, yes.
Is there any questions for the gentleman from our comments from the board? No? Okay. Is there anything else you want to answer?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the gallery who would like to speak on the matter? I'm sorry, Mr. Evans?
Seeing no one else ready to speak, the city has received letters
Okay.
as
Yeah.
well. from members
Can
of
you
the public.
summarize those, what those are? There are in support or any?
Yes, we have two letters, one from a gentleman who indicates he's a managing member of the Homeowners Association and that the association has no objections to the variance, and also a neighbor to 4197 Ravenwood Court. They also are in support.
Okay, thank you. Seeing that there's no one else present to speak on the matter, I'm going to close the public comment. I'm going to bring it back to the board for discussion. Is there any comments on this matter from the board or anyone willing to make a motion in support or to deny?
I wouldn't call
Mr. Courtney?
I wouldn't call an additional garage door an enhancement to the area, but the way it's shown here, it won't be a detriment either.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement that the elevation plans do look nice. Any additional comments from a board member? No?
And I would move
Any-
approval based on the items we've discussed, the hardships. are
Hardship,
no-
primary hardship being elevation issues or?
The hardship being the only location that this would really go. And I would move approval.
Is there anyone willing to second the motion? Mr. Eisenbacher?
Yes.
Please note that it's been seconded by Mr. Eisenbacher. Is there any comments or discussion on the motion that's before the board to approve the variance request? Seeing none, Mr. Evans, could you call the question?
Mr. Neal?
Yes.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Mr. Bloomingdale?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Courtney?
Yes?
Mr. Eisenbacher?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Congratulations. You have your approval. Thank you, your variance. That's it for active cases or hearing of cases for tonight. We're moving on into agenda item 5, which is communications. I have nothing to bring before the board. Does any board member have anything they would like to bring forward, or is there anything from staff?
Just one quick
Mr.
comment.
Krent?
You know, people that come before us all the time looking for variance or understanding our zoning code, they sometimes think it's too restrictive, maybe. I just wanted to point out how important zoning is for a city, and the one case in point, and I realize it's a tragedy, and I don't want to, mock these people, but in the city or township of West Texas, they had an explosion of a fertilizer plant, and it was within range of a lot of homes, and people lost their lives. To me, that just shows the critical importance of not only our city's job, but our job too, to make sure we have zoning that protects the safety and welfare of our people.
Oh, I agree. I think it's a very good comment that sometimes zoning policies do not just necessarily reflect aesthetics or a city plan or some other type of development. It involves safety. And just to add to what you're saying, some of the work that I do for a living, I do help assist commercial developers work on development projects and funding projects that involve money from HUD. And there are certain factors, including high-pressure gas lines and whatnot, that they're extremely rigid on. And it's not necessarily zoning, but it's a planning design issue, and they just are unyielding. And it's for a safety reason, so it's the same thought process. So thank you for bringing that. That's a very good point. Is there any additional communication, comments that a board member would like to make, or staff, for that matter? Seeing none, I'm going to close it, and we're going to move into miscellaneous business. It's a busy night here at the zoning board. We do have our annual election for next year's chairman and vice chairman. I do have one question that I want to ask before the board before we get into discussion and nominations. It seems like in the past, and Mr. Courtney, you may be wanting to comment on this. There have been at times, and I think I've only been on the board for a few years, but there were times, or sometimes there were votes that occurred where we essentially in one vote elected possibly a chairman and a vice chairman, and then there was a desire to bifurcate. And I think the last 2 years we bifurcated, but if I recall from what you had said, for years in the past we didn't. I don't personally care. But before we get into this, I was going to ask, is there any preference on the part of the board to bifurcate, which means essentially we'd have a separate vote for chairman, a separate vote for vice chairman? Is there any preference either way? We always seem to, the last 2 years anyway, get through it, and then we have a request to bifurcate. So I just want to upfront ask.
Decide before.
Yes. So personally, I'll tell you, I don't care. I think both are fine. Is there any general feeling to either way? No? I don't know. Mr. Clark, you've been a long-term board member. What is your preference? Hate to put you on the spot.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just think it's, dependent upon who's interested in running, and of course, if it's one motion for both, perhaps the person running for vice chair doesn't support the chair candidate or vice versa. So that I think factors into that. So I guess I think this is an appropriate time to ask if you're interested in running for chairman again. I think that kind of is the cart that should be behind the horse, not in front of it.
Oh, well, I did say something in an email a couple months back. My opinion is this. It's been a privilege to do this. I'm happy to do it again. I'm happy to sit in one of the little lower seats too. My feeling is that I think, it's only 7 of us here, and 2 people got to occupy these spots. I just think that if we have to have an election, we best have an election where we have more than one choice, because what's the point? So from that point, if enough people feel that I would do a good job, I'm happy to do it, and I appreciate the vote of confidence. But if someone else wants to come forward, I think that whoever it is, because I think everyone here, including you, Mr. Eisenbacher, I know you're new to the board, and Mr. Bloomingdale, you're new, but you've at least been here a little bit longer as an alternate. And I'm recognizing your background as previous council member. There's not a person here who can't do this job. So I'm saying is I'm happy to do it, but I'm also happy to see someone else do it. So having said that, like I said, I don't want to just end up at the end with this whole bifurcation issue. And maybe perhaps it's best if we just do 2 separate votes. Maybe that covers it.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks for having the discussion. All right, now I'm trying to figure out how this goes. I guess what I do is I'd like to open this up for nominations for chairman. Is there anyone who would like to nominate? Mr. Bloomingdale, sorry.
I would like to nominate Tom Neal for the position of chairman.
Alan. It's Alan.
Ellen.
Yeah. Oh,
Did you want
Alan.
You mean
Tom or
me?
Alan? Who are you nominating?
you Tom Krent or Alan Neal?
Tom Krent and Alan Neal.
Actually, Tom can't. You can't be nominated.
But let me say it again, Tom Neal. I know Krent, I'm not so sure about him, but Neal I am.
Alan Neal, okay.
Alan Neal, I'm sorry.
Ellen Neal.
Well, like I said, I guess I have to. I would accept that. Sure.
Blew that
Is there? Do we need to second that?
It's probably advisable if you, well, you're accepting nominations, so no, it's accepting
Okay.
nominations.
I mean, if somebody doesn't want to do it, they better say something now.
Right.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'll put my hat in the name in the hat. Is there anyone else additional? I'm sure every one of you want to nominate yourselves or something. Is there anybody else who's interested in running for this great position?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Clark.
I would like to move to close nominations and cast unanimous ballot. I guess we perhaps can't because there has to be a roll call, but at least at this point in time, close nominations for chairman.
Is there anyone else interested?
If we need be,
Okay. All right.
you're it, Al.
Isn't this like where you have 6 people step backwards and
Yep,
yours?
you're the one that didn't step back.
All right. Okay. Do we have a second on that?
Yeah, I second it.
Do we have to have a roll call on this?
Yes.
Yeah,
You should.
yeah.
Okay. Mr. Evans, can you read the roll call?
Mr. Lambert,
Yes.
Mr. Bloomingdale,
Yes.
Mr. Clark,
Yes.
Mr. Courtney,
Yes.
Mr. Eisenbacher,
Yes.
Mr. Neal,
Yes.
Mr. Krent.
Yes.
Mr. Neal is the chair.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I would just like to state to the board that I'm the current vice chairman. I would like to be considered for the next year as vice chairman again.
Okay. Okay. Then opening up nominations for vice chairman, is there anybody on the board who'd like to nominate someone?
Mr. Lambert.
Excuse me. Mr. Lambert?
I was going to nominate Mr. Clark if he's interested in serving again to continue on with the,
And you are interested?
I am.
Okay. So Mr. Clark has been nominated. Is there anyone else who wants to be nominated or nominate themselves for the position of vice chairman?
I'd like to nominate Dave Lambert.
Mr. Lambert, are you interested in?
well, originally I'd thought about it if I had been approached, but then I looked at my schedule for the next couple of months and I'm going to probably be missing a couple of meetings, so I feel awkward in accepting that position when I would be absent from 2 meetings in a row, so I appreciate the support from Mr. Krent, his nomination, and maybe some year in the future I would be willing to step back up into the leadership role again, but, I think we've done a good job the past year, so one more year, to quote Richard Nixon.
I see. All right, well, thank you, Mr. Lambert. I'd also like to note for the record, he has been chairman for 2 years, and he's also a previous council member, so he has done a lot for the city. Excuse me, Mr. Bloomingdale. Do you have a comment?
Is this a time to say, I'd like to make the same motion in regard to electing,
You could, if that's what you want to
yeah,
do.
that's what I'll do.
So you want to make a motion to close
That the motions be closed, or the nominations be closed.
for vice president, vice
for
chairman?
Vice chairman, and Mr. Clark be elected with unanimous vote.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Eisenbacher. Can you call the roll, Mr. Evans?
Yes, Mr. Bloomingdale,
Yes.
Mr. Clark,
Yes.
Mr. Courtney,
Yes.
Mr. Eisenbacher.
Yes.
Mr. Neal,
Yes.
Mr. Krent,
Yes.
Mr. Lambert.
Yes.
Okay, closing out miscellaneous business, we're going to go to public comment, and there's nobody left in the building here, so we're going to pass on item 8. Oh, excuse me, Mr. Bloomingdale.
Yes, I'm curious about our alternate status. Or do we have alternates picked? Is Rusty still a part of it? Or?
Well, Mr. Kaltunis is, and my understanding is the city council is aware that we need another individual, and they are working through that process. So eventually, there will be a new individual joining us. I don't know when, hopefully soon.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr.
I
Lambert?
do know that there's at least 1 or 2 people who are have put applications in for that alternate's position, but for some reason, council hasn't acted on it yet. So I think somebody's biting at the chomp to get on as an alternate, so.
Okay,
So it's up to council to move on it.
that's good to know. Well, that's good information to know. Well, closing out public comments, because there is none, I'd like to move to item 8, adjournment, if there's no additional information or comments from anyone. Thank you for coming tonight, and we'll see you next month.